The Gearbox is a piece of kinetic art that hangs in our hall bathroom. Its sole purpose is to look cool and support blinking lights. Because blinking lights are important.
This looks like wall art because there are no visible wires to give away its true nature. But those wires are there. Up in the attic, the Gearbox is wired directly into the bathroom exhaust fan, and the wire comes down through the wall into the back of the device. So whenever you turn on the exhaust fan in the bathroom, the Gearbox comes to life. This can be startling.
The Gearbox was built before we started making videos, so I don't have a lot of photographic evidence to show you of the build process, but I can tear it down to show you how we put it together. The first thing you notice about the Gearbox is that it makes noise. That's because we use these low RPM 110 volt motors that we had left over from another project. And put them in the Gearbox. There's one here and there's one here. But the Gearbox hangs in the bathroom, so when the exhaust fan is on, it covers up the noise of the motors, and as far as you're concerned, this is silent. And that's why we put the Gearbox in the bathroom. The Gearbox was mostly made of spare parts we had laying around. For example, the back is a piece of scrap plywood that we used from another project, and the sides are left over from yet another project that we were working on that we put together to make kind of a false front here to give us some room to put wiring in the back. But it's just a piece of plywood with 4 pieces of wood around it. The back has 2 sources of power, 110 volts and 5 volts, which is what we run the LEDs off of. So the 110 volt power comes in, and I've temporarily attached a power cord here so I can run it here in the electronics lab. And we have a transformer I'll show you later on the other side that provides power from the different LEDs that light up the front. But that's all it is. It's just blinking lights and 2 electric motors.
To make the surface of the white light cover and green background look old, I used a paint called crackle paint. Crackle paint has a black background coat that you spray on the surface of the wood that you're painting, and then before that bottom coat dries, you paint it with a top coat that then crackles up on top of the wet paint it's sitting on top of. The light cover is an example of the white paint, and I used some green paint off the shelf to paint the green background. But this is a quick way to age things. The gears are wooden gears that have been painted red and dirtied up to make look like metal. You can buy these gears on Etsy. My gears came from a vendor in Canada.
That's right. These gears are Canadian.
To hide the screws for the gears, I use something called a screw cap. A screw cap is just a little trap door that fits over the top of the screw. This is what they look like before you paint them. They're just little plastic things. They come in bags like this, and you find them at the hardware store in those weird drawers they have in the parts aisles. The screws that hold the gears are screwed into wooden axles, and they're not tightened down all the way, which allows the gear to turn. On the back of each gear is a washer that assists the gear in turning, but it's just a screw holding a wooden gear to a wooden axle. The axle is yet another spare part. It's actually scrap that is produced when you drill a large hole in a piece of wood. Usually you throw these things away, but in this case I was able to repurpose these as the axles for the gears. There are 8 of these scrap axles supporting 8 of the 9 gears, and in this construction photo you can see 8 of the gears supported by those axles, as well as the metal drive motor supporting the 9th gear, which is screwed onto the motor axle. The second motor just spins a piece of scrap metal.
The gears are cool and all, but they're only half of the awesomeness that is the Gearbox. The rest of the coolness is provided by lots of LEDs.
Most people think of LEDs as lights that turn on and off, but LEDs are so much more than that. This one doesn't care what you think. It turns whatever color it wants.
So let's talk about LEDs. LEDs produce beautiful colors. They flash, they blink, they color change. They last forever in applications. They truly are nature's little wonders, and they can only be found in the finest decorated homes. If you can use LEDs in your decorating, why wouldn't you? And if you're not festooning your home in tasteful LED displays, such as this one, I've got to ask, what are you really doing with your life?
The LEDs share a common ground, and then each LED has a resistor to drop its power low enough that it can operate and not explode. To show you how all of this works together, I'm going to go ahead and remove all the access panels and so forth so you can see the inside of the gearbox.
I have a lot of LEDs, but they're just the single color type, so they're not that exciting to look at. We had a lot that blink and flash and that sort of thing, but we used them in a lot of other projects, and we took the spares and put them in the gearbox, which means all of my spares are in the gearbox. I don't have any I can show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to show you the trick LEDs, the flashing and that sort of thing in the gearbox with just an overview there. But they're LEDs, so pretend they look like this, but they're really in here.
The gearbox has 20 LEDs, 2 LED light bulbs, and 2 plasma bulbs. We'll start with the first one. This is just a red LED that's really just happy to be there. Next up are 2 arrays of color-changing LEDs, 3 in the top group and a single color-changing LED below. All 4 color-changing LEDs project their light onto a colored screen, so they don't look like LEDs at all here, but that's really what they are. Over on the secondary motor, we have 2 blue blinking LEDs. These LEDs blink super fast, about 200 blinks per minute. They make it look like this motor is doing something important, but it's not. In this box are 9 LEDs that both flash and blink, and put on quite a show. These 9 LEDs and their associated wiring are arranged so that they can be seen, and we used a cheap transparent drinking cup to hold the 4 on the bottom. The fuse block was an inexpensive antique store find, and we hollowed out the bottom of each of the glass fuses to allow light to shine through. The LEDs we used are flickering LEDs of the type that are used in these candles you can get at the dollar store. And the dollar store is a great place to get these LEDs, should you be in the market. But we needed blue LEDs, so we bought them online and placed them in the back of the fuse block to make it look like electricity going through the circuit. The plasma bulbs are leftovers from a home improvement project that involved plasma bulbs and lots of lava lamps. The plasma bulbs fit into regular candelabra sockets. They put on a great mad scientist lightning show, especially when the lights are down low in the bathroom. The last 2 bulbs are 2 LED Edison bulbs that are controlled by a small dimmer that we hid inside this metal box.
Let's talk about non-electronics. You know, the parts of the gearbox that aren't LEDs, lights, or motors, and give a really cool backdrop to the really important part, which we know is the blinking lights.
The copper tubes are left over from a computer that hangs on the wall project, and the brass strips are also from that project. The fuse block is left over from a clock weather station project that also hangs on the wall. The box that hides the candelabra mounts and the LEDs down below is just scrap pine that we put in and painted poorly to make it look old. A pair of candelabra sockets and the LED power supply transformer are concealed in the top box, and the bottom box conceals the support structure for the blinking and flashing LEDs. A steel access panel salvaged from the computer on the wall project covers the LED box. An old computer CPU heatsink that was painted black goes here. And the piece of scrap metal the second motor spins is just another heatsink with a hole drilled in it and painted black. Old scraps of wire and connecting hardware are scattered throughout. And this rusted old box is a holder for an old set of calipers. The cover for the gear drive motor is a piece of scrap balsa with a screw and hole cut in it to make it look interesting. The color-changing LED covers are metal pieces from an old piece of furniture. The LEDs are mounted in the surface of the gearbox and shine onto the brackets that have copier paper glued underneath. The copier paper is just a simple way to make the LEDs not look like LEDs. The brass pipes are from earlier projects, and this is just a row of staples, you know, like from the shop. This is a refrigerator magnet. This is a piece of wood with a shelf part on it to conceal the LED. And this shiny thing down here, it's just a big old thumbtack. So as you can see, the Gearbox was really just built with things out of our junk drawer and leftovers from projects. And instead of throwing it away, we decided to hang our trash on the wall.
That's it. That's how we use junk parts to put together this very cool piece of kinetic art. Now I got to put this thing back together. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up to let us know that you liked it. And if you haven't already done it, please subscribe and ring that bell so that you'll know the next time we do something.
Come on. Everyone is doing it.
We're always building stuff, sometimes interesting stuff. And you can keep up with what's happening here in the shop by joining us on Facebook or Instagram. You can help us make more videos by buying cool stuff from our store or by sponsoring us on Patreon.
No matter what you do, we're happy you joined us for the ride. Until next time, Space Cadets.